Hey guys, welcome back to Hyper Coliseum. Today we have another deck profile for you. This week our members requested HeavyMetaldramon as the deck to do. I have some feelings and thoughts about heavy metal, and to start, before I get into things, I like him as a Digimon. Okay, as a Digimon, I like him. I like Impmon having this like alternative line to kind of help like mirror Guilmon having its alternative line with Megidra and everything. So I think that's cool. But before I get into other opinions and stuff about the deck, we'll go over, of course, the deck first. But before we jump into even that, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys are enjoying the content we've been throwing your way. If you're a member, you're going to be seeing this early, so thank you so much for supporting the channel and for your suggestions. As of this video going up, let us know what you guys want to see next in the description down below. Everyone can get their say as well, and of course we'll have our usual members post up for you guys to also, you know, choose what you want to see as you guys get your priority. But if you're seeing this when it goes public, thank you for checking this out. Hopefully this, you know, maybe sheds a little bit of light on Heavy Metal Draw and maybe why some of the reasons it can do some cool stuff, but why it's maybe not performing as good as it could be right now. I did do some good play testing with this. I did lots of test hands prior to actually playing it at locals the other week. I went 2-2. I'll go over my stuff later towards the end of the video as well. But anyways, that's enough of me yapping. If you're around here for the first time and you enjoy this content, maybe try and stick around, check out other videos. If you like it enough, maybe subscribe. That'd be pretty cool. And if you like this video, go ahead and drop a like down below. It helps us know what you guys want to see and don't want to see. So thank you. Okay, so deck profile. Starting off with the Digitama, we have Yaman, 4 of the EX7 Yaman. This card is actually pretty good. So when attacking once per turn, if you have 4 or fewer cards in your hand, you digivolve into a Digimon card with Dark Dragon or Evil Dragon trait in the trash. So it's nice. It lets you sort of like extend your plays. It's very good with the new Memory Setter Yuki from BT20. I'll go into that why a little bit later when I get to her. But this just allows us to Evo into our pieces in trash. And I wish that everything followed the 4 or fewer philosophy in this deck, because a lot of things, or not a lot of things, excuse me, but some things don't, and it makes things a little bit harder. But anyways, yeah, so good egg, cool card, is one of the main sort of things it turns on. It could be a little bit better, but I'll go over that later, like I was saying. Moving on to rookies, we run full Impmon lineup. There's not really any other like evil trait rookies that you can run. And both your Punkmons, the one from EX7 and BT20, only Evo for 2 over and a level 3 with evil trait. So these are kind of just like the best ones to use, really, in my opinion. First things first, we have the BT19 Impmon, who play if you have 1 or fewer Tamers. You can play a purple Tamer with a play cost of 4 less from your trash without paying the cost. So this works really well because we have means of spitting this guy out for free from our trash, so we can spit him out on play, spit out the Tamer, which is really nice. It helps. And the inheritable is pretty good. 3 of it is nice. We're running a little bit of weird ratios because you kind of need room for other things. So we're running the like 11-9 ratios for rookies and champions, and then we're running 7. Or actually, I guess 9-6 is technically, but 2 of them are more just like they're just means of speeding us up. They're not really things you would ever Evo into, unless you, I don't know why you would. And then we run 8 level 5s because you kind of need all of them. Moving on from that, we run 4 copies of the BT20 Impmon. Standard Searcher, top 3, grabs pretty much anything in the deck outside of your options, and then returns the rest to the bottom. And it's a 2-hit, so it can grab one of your Digimon, and it can also grab one of your Tamers. So good card. And then heritable plus 2k, so just big boost. And then the EX7 Impmon, who is just sort of our like means of extending our line, making us go faster up the combo. Reduces our evolution cost by 1, or digivolution cost by 1, if we go into a Dark Dragon or Evil Dragon. So that's nice. And keep in mind, these Impmons both Evo for 0 over the Yaman, so you don't have to worry about that 1 cost. Moving on from rookies, onto our level 4s, we run 1 copy of the Iceman Scatter Mode from EX7. I see this card every game I play this deck. You do not need more than 1. It only has an on-play, which is you trash a card in your hand, mandatory. Then you may return, so optional. 1 Digimon card with the Dark Dragon or Evil Dragon trait from your trash to the hand. This card is purely just a means of being played out by your Heavy Metal Draws to get back rookies, basically, so you can start your line again, because there will be plenty of times where you will put yourself down to no cards in hand, and it does not feel good if you don't see a rookie. So this scatter mode is really just there to help you kind of cycle your pieces a bit more, and you don't need more than one, in my opinion. Like, if this guy, he hits the board, he does his thing. If he leaves, you either can play him again to get something back, or if he gets like deleted, you can play him back out through those means, and potentially swing with him for potentially 2 checks. He's 4K, so he probably won't live it, but Eismon jamming? Who knows? Moving on, we run 4 copies of the BT20 Pokemon. This card's pretty good. The whole BT20 line in general is pretty solid for the most part. So on play and on Evo, you trash one card in your hand, mandatory, and then until the end of your opponent's turn, one of your Digimon gains blocker and retail, so you can toss that blocker retail anywhere. It's very good. Mind you, you have to toss both somewhere, but it's a good card, solid. It's a good one to play out. The 5 play cost is so much better than the 6 play cost for the other Pokemon. It makes it actually more usable and makes the strategy more doable. You can, I'll save my opinions for the end, but this is a pretty solid card in the deck. I do like this card. And then we run 4 copies of the EX7 Pokemon, who just standard new sort of tamer play out. If you have 1 or fewer tamers, you can play one of the specified tamers. So this one, in case you play Yuki without paying the cost. So solid. The 6 play cost is tough, but the 6 KDP does come up. It is nice. It works very well because you can be an 8K level 4, which is pretty beefy. So it's pretty good. With your Impmon inheritables. Moving on to 5s, we run 4 copies of the BT20 Loudmon. This card is really, really good. So on play on Evo, you trash 2 cards in hand, mandatory. Then for the turn, one of your Digimon gains Raid and Piercing and +4 KDP. This card is really good. And then it has the inherited effect, the same thing that the other old EX7 Loudmon has as well, is while you have 4 or fewer cards in your hand, all of your Digimon with Dark Dragon, Evil Dragon trait, Dark Dragon or Evil Dragon trait, I should say, gain Sec +1. Good. Solid. Good for aggression. This card is really good. It would be so much better, though, if they lasted until end of opponent's turn. The fact that the DP boost only lasts for the turn is tough. I understand why, and I'll go over why in a little bit when we get to the new Yuki memory setter. But it's just, it could be so much more. It could do so much more for the deck. It would make more sense, too, admittedly. But we'll get there with our combo top end. Or not top end, combo top. What am I talking about? I can't talk. I'm silly. You lose a couple of hairs, and then all of a sudden you can't talk anymore. At least for me. Other people are fine. I mean, look at Northern Lion. That guy's a genius. On play on Evo, you trash 2 cards in your hand. Then delete one of your Digimon with 7,000 DP or less. The EX7 Loud's pretty good. The 7 play cost it works out better. And then the same inheritable as the other one, like I was saying. They both have the same one. The 7 KDP or less is tough. I wish that it was DP like equal to him. It would make this deck, again, it's so much better. Because so many things are just bigger than 7K by the time you would play this guy out, realistically. Like, usually. Like, the only thing I'm ever, like, popping with him is rookies. Most of the time. Like, that's really all I ever pop with him. So, but otherwise, still solid card. And keep in mind, they also Evo for 3 instead of 4 over Evil Dragon or Dark Dragon trade cards. So, keep that in mind. Moving on to 6s, we run 2 copies of the BT7 Nidhoggmon. The one digivolving for this does not matter. It's you trash a card in your hand, or you may trash a card in your hand, or delete level 4 or lower. You're never evoing into this. This card is purely meant to be pitched because when you trash it in your hand, using one of your effects, which you do a lot of that with this deck, you gain a memory. I've honestly thought about just putting this guy to 4, just so I can purely make my evo costs cheaper when I trash cards from hand, and I think it's reasonable. But I run 2 right now. Something to consider if you're planning on playing this deck, because you could run this at 4 if you wanted to. It would not be bad at all, I don't think, because you trash cards so fast in your hand that it would just be consistently being pitched. Moving on from that, we run 3 copies of the brand new BT20 HeavyMetaldramon Ace. This card is actually really good, aside from the fact that it is an ace. And I'll get to the why for that later. Like I said, I know I'm tacking on a lot of stuff to later. I have lots of thoughts on this deck, so I'll get to that in a minute. But just going over the cards still and keeping to that. On play on Evo, you trash cards in your hand until you have 4 left. That's good. That's solid. I like that we're working around the 4 strategy. And then you play one 8,000 DP or lower Digimon card from your trash without paying the cost. For each card this effect trashed, remove 2,000 from this effect's DP maximum. Okay, that's fine. It's tough, but it's a bit more fair than the other guy who punishes you for having anything in hand. But it's really good. That's a really solid effect. And then all turns, all of your Dark Dragon or Evil Dragon trait Digimon gain Rush and Blocker and +2 KDP. So the idea that I was talking about before with the BT20 Loudmon is that you would evo into this guy, ideally play out this Loudmon, and then swing at like 14k for potentially probably 2 checks if you have an inheritable under your Heavy Metal Ace. I think that's the idea that they were going for. It just would have been nice because they also gain blocker if you could have just played out a big blocker because of him and just played out a 14k blocker level 5 that wasn't an ace card. That would be cool. Instead, he's a 10k blocker if you play him out. So that's a bit tough. But that's the idea that they're going for there. That's why this is only for your turn. It also just feels like they pulled the reins a bit too tight. Like they were really, like, I feel like they were very scared of making this deck too strong. And yeah, I'll go over why in a little bit. But moving on, finishing out our level 6s. We run 4 copies of the EX7 HeavyMetaldramon. This is sort of like your main boss monster. He's your main form of removal in the deck. On Evo, you trash 2 cards in your hand, then you delete one of your opponent's Digimon with as much or less DP as this Digimon. So it's pretty decent. It's fine. There's a lot of things that have deletion protection, or like armor purge, or Digimon effect protection, or you know something, etc., etc. But if you find those right windows, you can easily try and pop something and still be swinging into something at the same time, depending on if they're suspended or not, of course. But that part's pretty decent. And then end of your turn, once per turn, you may play 1 card with the Evil Dark Dragon or Evil Dragon trait and a play cost of 8 or less from your trash without paying the cost. Then for each card or for each card in your hand, you reduce 1 from this effect's play cost maximum. So that means basically if you have 1 card in hand, you're playing out a 7 cost or less. No longer can play out an 8. If you have 4 cards in hand, you can play 4 cost or less, etc. You get the idea. So you are actively punished for having cards in your hand, which is pretty tough, but overall he's still like he's a fairly powerful card. I wish he was the ace and that his end of turn was just maybe not an end of turn or something else. Maybe it could still be like end of opponent's turn or something like that. Even maybe that would make sense. But like I said, I'll go over thoughts about this deck and how it could improve later. But that's him. He's sort of your main boss monster because you kind of need the removal in this meta as much as you can. People's boards just stick too easily nowadays. Especially with you have so many things like swinging with jamming, or they get DP boost on their turn and they can swing over security. Like they just go crazy. Moving on, Tamers. We run 3 copies of the new BT20 memory setter Yuki. Aside from setting memory, end of your turn, if you have 4 of your cards in your hand, you can suspend this Tamer, and then one of your Digimon with the Dark Dragon or Evil Dragon trait attacks a player. That's pretty good. That's really nice. She alone speeds up your strategies so much. She makes you a whole turn faster, basically. Because she makes it where, like let's say you push up your EX7 Hitmon, Evo into a Punkmon for 1, and then Evo into a Loudmon for 3. You'll probably pass turn at that point if you were at, if you set memory, so you'll pass over, let's see, you went from 3 to 2, so you'll pass them over 1. You can then use end of turn to swing if you have 4 less cards in hand, and then use Yamon's when attacking effect to Evo into a HeavyMetaldramon in your trash, and still get your damage off, instead of having to like Evo into Loud and then just kind of wait and then call it a day there. Because that's kind of what you had to do before, unless you had enough memory for it. So it's tough. It was tough, but this helps speed you up a good bit. So we went 3 of her because you want to see her, but you don't really need more than 1 of her on the board. It's just there's not really like another like Tamer you could run that would make more sense than her really realistically. You really want to see her as fast as you can, but she's not like quite worth the 4 of either. So you kind of have to find that middle ground. But what is worth the 4 of is our EX7 Yuki, so start of your main phase, if your opponent has a Digimon, you gain a memory. Pretty standard for Tamers nowadays. And then main, if you have 4 of your cards in your hand, by suspending this Tamer, one of your Digimon may digivolve into a Digimon card with the Dark Dragon or Evil Dragon trait in the trash. She is your main way this deck functions. Without her, you really struggle to play the game. You need to have at least probably 2 of her set up early so you can climb your line, because you will hit a certain point after your first initial line with Heavy Metal that you will probably have 1 or 2 cards in hand, realistically, if that, depending on how you were playing prior. And if that stack goes bye-bye, which you have no protections, you're just a big guy swinging into security usually and praying you live to see another turn. If that stack goes bye-bye, you have no means of getting those cards back. You need to pray that you have a rookie in hand, or you top deck a rookie, and then you can use her to go back up your line. So it also means that Tamer hate is really hard for this deck because it relies so heavily on its Tamers. So something to keep in mind, but that's why we run 4 of her. Also, the extra memory gain obviously is very nice because you want to extend your plays as much as you can with this deck. I mean, any deck really, but especially this one, because you got to make every turn count so much more. You can't have like a defensive passive turn and then like a really explosive turn after. You have to have like every turn has to be explosive for you when you actually are going to participate in the game and not just play out Tamers and Evo in the back. Moving on from Tamers onto options, we run 4 copies of Miss Memory Boost. These were 4 trainings before, and while the trainings did come up occasionally, I found myself realistically, because I'm evoing from the trash so often because of Yaman's effect, because of Yuki's effect, I'm not ever really getting the chance to capitalize off the trainings as much as one would like, because you can't use the training and then evo off of one of these effects because you evo as part of the training, right? And because you don't ever have a hand, sometimes the training is just a dead card. It's usually just a search that maybe gets you started early in the game, but it falls off once your strategy actually gets rolling. So you could also run just purple memory boost if you're worried about like putting cards you might need in the trash. But to me, I'm like, you know what? All these things, I don't mind being in the trash as long as I have a rookie in hand and I see the Yukis. And even the Yukis, I don't mind being in trash because I can play them back out thanks to BT19 Hitmon. So that's kind of the idea. It's a very helpful card. You could also run things like calling. You could run some other stuff as well. But to finish up the options, we run 2 copies of Purple Scramble. The main reason I do this is because it's the same thing where like you're not gonna have a hand if you play this early to evo into like your Loudmon or something in hand, because realistically that's probably where you'll be evoing from like initially before you start pitching cards and you don't really have a hand anymore. At least in my playtesting, that's how it went. Is I usually went up the line in hand, and then past that I was evoing from trash 90% of the game. The scramble just helps you recur your board, right? So you can put cards back on top, you can play an Impmon out, and then you can climb up your line and potentially control your opponent's board if you go into something like EX7, Heavy Metal Draw, or etc., depending on how much memory you have, of course. But they just sort of help you do that early. They're not a security. You obviously play a Purple Digimon card with 2,000 DP or less, which is all of your rookies, and then you add this card to the hand. So it's helpful. If he gets milled off the purple or the Miss Memory Boost, tough, but you know that's how things go with this deck. You don't really have like another perfect choice, in my opinion. So that's the deck. That's the list there. To go over a couple of things, I don't want to linger too long. Disclaimer. I love HeavyMetaldramon. I love Impmon. I think this line is one of the coolest things they have designed in recent years, and I hope that it gets better support in Liberator. But the entire design premise for the deck is bad. Bandai, you do so good with so many things. This was not good. You fumbled the bag so hard with this one, man. Like, it's tough because I see what they were going for. I see the idea, and on paper, it seems powerful, right? Evoing into these big, dark, and evil dragon cards from trash to hopefully resolve powerful effects on the board or play out more bodies. It seems cool, but in reality, with the game state, with how many things have protections, with how many things just climb bigger than you, with how many things have just complete immunity, with how many things can recur board better than you can, it just does not work. I went 2-2, like I said at the beginning of the video, but the only reason I did this is because one round I played against Rio, and he just bricked. He didn't see anything that he could do anything with, and I high rolled. That's it. Which any deck will win if they high roll and your opponent bricks. If you don't, then you're playing a deck that doesn't attack, and that is what it is. But 90% of decks will just win if you high roll and your opponent bricks, because it's just icing on the cake at that point. And then the other round was someone who was just coming back into the game, and they were playing an incomplete, or maybe I shouldn't say incomplete, but like a more defensive version of Royal Knights, because they didn't have all the Royal Knight pieces, and so they weren't really able to do any damage to me. So I was able to just wideboard and just play the game, and he couldn't answer my board state really. So that's why I won those 2 games. The other 2 games I played against Virus Imperial. And I played against Omni DNA, and it was a wash. I did a little bit of damage, and otherwise I got washed. So going back to the design premise of the deck, the idea is cool, but however, because you're still having to pay full Evo cost while having to set up your trash and get the right pieces in trash, which isn't the hardest thing to do, but it's just an extra step in the process, the payoff just doesn't feel good when you aren't actively controlling your opponent's board and you have no protections, right? And so because you have no protections and you don't have any on deletions either, you just, when your stack gets cleared, it's just gone. You don't get anything out of it. There's no recurrence. I did talk about running. Someone suggested running Analog Youth in the deck to me, which like I understand the idea, but realistically, you're probably gonna pass over so much memory with this deck most of the time. Maybe it might be better now with Miss Memory Boost. I haven't tested too much with Miss Memory Boost yet, so it might be better a little bit now. But the Analog Youth is not gonna matter, and if you trash Analog Youth, he's gone, right? And you don't always have the choice. You're probably gonna be trashing him because you have to just try and play the game fast enough, because the game state's so fast right now that you'll just lose if you don't play with this deck. This deck's not nearly as explosive enough to do it. The biggest issue on top is like within the design philosophy, part of the issue with it as well is that your main boss monster is only a board control when he hits the board initially. If his one digivolving effect, like if HeavyMetaldramon's digivolving effect was also one attacking effect and once per turn, perfect, great. You have consistent trash setup and you can still control board pretty well. That would have made this card 10 times better. What also would have just made more sense in general is that the BT20 HeavyMetaldramon should have been your main body and should not have had ace. As an ace card, he's useless. If you blast Digivolve into him during counter timing on your opponent's turn, assuming your stack somehow lived, all you get out of it realistically, assuming you didn't swing, is a 14k blocker and at best a 10k blocker. I guess he still can get the plus 4k when you play out Loudmon because he gains it for the turn. So he can also be a 14k blocker. So to correct my statement from earlier, but even then, it just would have been nice if it lasted until the end of opponent's turn, because he just doesn't. You basically are making a choice with him whether you want to play him defensively or play him aggressively, and it's just a weird bottleneck on the deck that doesn't make sense. Like if you're already paying your full Evo costs to Evo from trash and do everything else, and then on top of that, you're also being like punished for having any cards in hand. It all just starts to collapse and columble. That's the whole thing with this, like the design philosophy for this deck, is that there's so many like different working parts that don't have enough of a good payout to make the setup or the cost of it like worth it. It's tough. So sorry, I know I'm getting a little bit ranty, I'm getting a little bit rambly. Like I said, I wasn't gonna go too long, but that's pretty much it. Like HeavyMetaldra should have been your standard boss monster. BT20 HeavyMetaldra should have been the standard boss monster. EX7 HeavyMetaldra should have been the ace in my opinion, because he's so much more valuable as an ace card. If you were able to Evo, trash 2 cards and pop something off of the ace Evo, that does so much more than what just blocking can do, especially when you have things that just ignore blocking nowadays too, or just so many things climb higher than 14k. It's tough. And the idea that like part of the deck is like, yeah, will work when you have 4 or fewer cards in hand, but then your main boss monster actively punishes you for having any cards in hand. But because he's kind of your main, you kind of need to run 4 of him. You can't just run 4 of the ace and call it a day because you have no protections. And it's there's so much removal in the game that he'll just be gone and you overflow 4 and you're going to be a sad guy. So there's, that's kind of the issue. I want this deck to be good. There's little things here and there that would have made more sense. Like to me, you should be reducing Evo cost by 1 off of Yaman and off of EX7 Yuki. Switch the ace rolls of the HeavyMetaldramons. Switch the effects around a little bit to make that kind of work accordingly. And then PT20 Loudmon make it last till end of opponent's turn. You don't have to give the deck protections. That's fine. Don't do that. But make it aggressive enough and control enough where it doesn't need that, because right now it doesn't have it. It doesn't have enough control. It doesn't have enough aggression to actually like make enough of an impact, and that's why we don't see it perform at all in the current meta. Who knows? Maybe we'll get more support for it that will help it. I want this deck to do well. I want to see it do well. Hopefully it can one day. I mean, it's general enough in terms of like looking for cards and traits that anytime we see Gallantmon support, because Growlmon is also a Dark Dragon, that those cards could be spliced in here. And there's definitely different like little wonky things you can do with builds to kind of mess around with stuff and try and make things work. But in reality, it's just the idea behind the design of the deck just does not work. And I think that Bandai was too scared with having another strong purple deck in the meta that they pulled the reins a little too hard, and they ended up just making a deck that is at best tier fun. And even the changes that I have listed off, I don't think it would make it meta. I think it would just make it relevant. It would actually be you could maybe actually take games off of top contenders occasionally. if you saw the right line or played it correctly. But in its current state, it's just hard. You basically you're just playing a deck that's going to do 2 checks. Your board's going to get wiped, and then you're probably going to lose the game from there. That's the reality. So, anyways, that's enough of me ranting. That's enough of me rambling. If you want to try the deck out, go for it. If you figure out some other tech that please tell me. I want to make this deck good, and I've tried with so many different things, and it doesn't do the thing. But enough of me ranting. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. I'm sorry if I'm seeming like I'm trying to be, I'm being down on the deck. I really don't want to be. Like I said, I want it to be good. It's just the reality is that it's not, and hopefully one day it is. I would love for it to be good. I would love to see this deck top. But I don't think it's gonna do it anytime soon. No, maybe I'll eat my words. That'd be sick if I did. But yeah, so I'm gonna head out. You guys have a good one, and we'll catch you on that flippy flip. Okay. Bye bye.